Viewers, how does this happen? How does an intelligent, seemingly balanced young woman who placed all her faith in one man end up in the refrigerator of the home they shared, chopped into 36 or 35 different pieces? Viewers, some betrayals are so diabolic that they leave you chilled to the bone, bewildered and wondering about the meaning of life and love. Aftab Poonawalla is as woke can get, viewers. If you go through his social media posts, you will notice his advocacy for LGBTs, for women. At one point, he endorses the progressive view that women aren't born with any labels, prefixed labels. One of those labels he supposedly detested, and rightly so, was sex object. There you can see the other labels he had a problem with. These views made him attractive, as Shraddha, from what we gather after speaking to some of her friends, seemed to be an independent woman who would value a man that respected women in general. Yet the irony, the supreme irony, is that he reportedly killed Shraddha when she began to ask him to commit to the relationship in a more meaningful way. Aftab has apparently confessed that he allegedly was inspired by a TV show called Dexter. The lead character of the show, however, only kills those that are deemed a threat to society. Other serial killers, viewers, other unholies, but not the innocent, not the trusting, not the wholesome. This, of course, by the way of an explanation, doesn't add up, as you can imagine. Perhaps Aftab was a predator, as the police claim. He wore his disguise well. Let me, viewers, however, take you through what we know about this grisly crime. Aftab and Shraddha were supposed to be in love. Shraddha asked him to marry her, and then a story that should have ideally ended in a lifetime of happiness ended abruptly and brutally. Shraddha's dreams literally chopped into pieces. Her trust frozen in a refrigerator. Viewers, her life partner, her supposed life partner, reportedly even on the day of the murder, ate in peace, ordering food from an online app, even as she lay dead in the same house, perhaps right next to him or in the same room. The depravity, the brutishness doesn't end there. Over the course of the next fortnight, Aftab allegedly went about disposing the remains by cutting them, slicing them, dicing her, and storing her parts in the refrigerator. This went on for 16 days, viewers. And to mask the smell, the police tell us he was lighting incense, sticks in the house. The more one learns about the murder, the more distrusting one gets, viewers, about the inherent goodness of humanity. Here is what happened. A gruesome sequence painstakingly put together by Times Now's reporters from Delhi and Maharashtra. Watch this, viewers.
This is house number 93, Chatarpur, gully number 1. This is where the incident took place. These are the visuals from inside this area. He strangled her, cut her into 35 pieces, kept her pieces in the fridge on a stand. You can see right there. That is the area where the fridge used to be kept, and pieces of her body used to be kept by Poonawalla.
This is the fridge in which the dead body was stored for 15 to 18 days. As of now, the accused is in police custody. Further investigation is taking place.
Shraddha murder case are quite gruesome. These are the visuals from Mehrauli area of the national capital, where accused Aftab Poonawalla used to dispose of the body of his lover here 2 a.m. every night. By far, police has recovered 12 to 13 pieces of Shraddha's body from this place only.
और देखिए यहाँ पे ये बिल की कॉपी है, इसी बिल की कॉपी आप देखिए कि यहीं से जो है इसने यहाँ से वो 260 लीटर की फ्रिज खरीदी थी। ये देखिए ये फ्रिज जो है, इसी फ्रिज की एक वैरायटी को उसने यहाँ से खरीदा था। ये डबल डोर की फ्रिज है 260 लीटर की, और इसी फ्रिज की वैरायटी को उसने खरीदा था। तकरीबन 25,000 रुपए जो है उसने इसके कारण इस फ्रिज के लिए पे किया था। क्रेडिट कार्ड से बताया जा रहा है कि उसने पेमेंट किया था।
Viewers, it's all very disturbing, isn't it? It's all out of one of those crazed, psychopathic movies that one watches. But the police, viewers, who must be credited, and let's give them credit where it's due, for solving this case, have also added what they believe happened. Why this relationship went the way it has gone. The police, viewers, were brought into this case after Shraddha's parents alerted them. Remember, Shraddha and Aftab were living in Delhi. They had moved to Delhi from Maharashtra because their parents, or at least Shraddha's parents, were not very happy with the relationship, and they left Maharashtra to live in Mehrauli, rented accommodation near Chhatarpur. Viewers, the family, of course, was intermittently in touch with Shraddha, and apparently when some of her friends began to speak to her, she started talking about some physical abuse that was inflicted upon her by Aftab. But she found herself unwilling or unable to perhaps leave this house of discord. Viewers, we are also being told that her father had also counseled her against continuing with the relationship, but she didn't heed his advice and then eventually moved to Delhi, where contact between the parent and Shraddha became much more infrequent. In fact, it was only after a friend got in touch with her brother, Shraddha's younger brother, that the family began to get a bit concerned. The friend said that he hadn't been in touch with Shraddha for a while, 2 months in fact. That would mean that this crime was committed somewhere in July, around the time when the refrigerator was bought. The police say it was bought almost on the same day as the crime itself, or thereabouts. There's still more clarity awaited on that, but if that is indeed the case, this was obviously well thought out, viewers. It was all well thought out, and it appears that Aftab had planned it in a way that he thought, he was confident that he could get away with it, cover his tracks, etc. But first, listen to the police.
The murder happened in mid of May, as of now what we have. Then gradually what the boy did was he chopped the body to pieces and stored them in fridge. And later on with time, over months, he disposed of the body parts in various parts of the area.
As per the initial investigation, what is the motive that you have been zeroed upon?
The motive currently what we have is that it was a live-in issue basically. They had a relationship fight and this thing got out of control and he killed the girl.
Viewers, let's speak to Rajat Shukla, who's a friend of Shraddha's first, before I bring in some of our commentators, etc., to speak a little bit about their views on this particular matter. It is one of those crimes which can't be brushed under the carpet, viewers. There are so many issues here that we need to confront. Because after all, relationships are all integral to our lives. And how they're managed, etc., make and break lives, as we have now seen. So there's a lot to be said. Unfortunately, we aren't having robust conversations. We'll come to that in just a short while. But let me go across to Rajat Shukla, Shraddha's friend. Rajat, we spoke to you earlier and you talked about Shraddha. Tell us a little bit about Shraddha. What was she like?
Shraddha was a very active girl in college, let me tell you that. She had a different spark. She used to have a pixie cut hairstyle, which made her stand out. And she used to be very active in theatre. We used to participate in Marathi theatre. We used to perform on various stages. something just happened, during the time of her graduation. 2018 was when I think she went to a secret relationship with this guy, but 2019 was when we were informed that yes, she is in a relationship with this boy, Aftab. Few of our friends met him, and they thought that he's a good guy. These people are mature. They are going to stay together. Shraddha was not in very good relationships with her family. She had her reasons, but she was very active with her friends. And then she getting into this boy. That is something absolutely going to be personal between two loving partners. That is definitely not exposed to us. However, much that we knew, it was a beautiful relationship. But now after she, so it's been like 6 months, we got to know that she's missing. We tried to contact her. There was no way we could do that. And after hearing about the murder, now comes a question whether this person was truly a lover or a murderer. The question is.
Well, of course, I don't want to prejudge the investigations, but let's just rewind a little bit, Rajat, because you talked about the fact that she met him somewhere in 2019. Did I get that right?
We were informed that she met him in 2019, but I think she met him in 2018 itself, as informed by few of our friends.
Okay, so then she happened to move away from Maharashtra and she started living up north, now in Delhi specifically. Now, why did that happen? Were you aware of why that was?
Yeah. So both of them had decided mutually that they're going to do a job, there in Delhi. But sooner after they shifted, Shraddha was totally out of reach.
Okay.
And, he said that, he doesn't know where she is. So that really, made us question that where is she fine and everything. We were expecting that, she comes back, safe and sound, but now you see what's happening.
So how soon after they moved to Delhi did he sort of tell you he doesn't know where she is? What was that period of time?
So there are few people who are like extremely close to Shraddha. They informed that within a week Shraddha was nowhere. Like there was no signs that Shraddha could be contacted.
Okay, and there was nothing that she was posting on social media. She was not active anywhere.
Yeah.
That must have been very worrying.
And that really made, very, very, very worrying. And it's the reason all of us friends and few people, immediate family and the relatives, we started worrying at where she is. This is really sad that the system of giving freedom crosses the line where you sort of become unreachable to your loved ones, and I think that is certainly a thing that everybody should see it as a concern. You cannot just give freedom to somebody. It's not that, this is not Shraddha's fault. This is somewhere our fault. We feel sad that we were unable to contact her. If we would have been around her or been there in her decisions or, her understanding towards the relationship, she used to tell us that, Aftab is being very violent to her. Aftab beats her. But, she was in love. She was in a toxic relationship. She wanted to leave. But she was unable to because she was in deep love. And, as it is very rightly said that, sacrifices are something that love really, demands. But I think this is very, very bad. One must really see their friends or their family in a way that they should see this as a concern. That if somebody is suffering from, let's say, loneliness, you need to be there around them, not leave them in whatever life they are leading into. Aftab might have seen this as an opportunity and, might have got into love, but then a person doing murder is like certainly, can't be called love.
Well, obviously there are complications here, and I think, Rajat, you're right. When there are signals, one must, if one if you're a true friend of somebody, you must sort of recognize those signals, raise the alarm bells, perhaps, group around that individual and try to sort of, and that's I think an important lesson, viewers. We're living such disconnected lives. I mean, while we are connected through this horrible device called the mobile phone, which is, clamped to our ears or our palms all the time, we're actually not communicating. We're quite broke from each other. When colleagues fall sick, they fall off the map, we let it go. We call when we want to, because we are so busy doing our own thing on social media that we just forget. And then there are times when we think we should be so loyal to the friend that actually their loyalty costs them. And these are some lessons. I mean, I'm nobody to speak on anyone's behalf, but from what Rajat is saying, I think you're right, Rajat. There is, and I can see you're getting emotional there. But I suppose this is a moment for you all to grieve, and I'm not going to continue with the conversation with you, sir, because I know it's disturbing, and I'm sorry to have reopened some of those wounds. But thank you very much, Rajat, for speaking to us, and may your soul rest in peace, and God bless you. And I hope you can come together as a group of friends. Thank you. Thank you very much. As I was saying, viewers, unfortunately, we're so divided. Our society is so fractious that we can't even unite to bring ourselves to unconditionally condemn this act of utter devilry. Some are bearing the name of the perpetrator to self-censor their outrage. Others aren't demanding accountability from a society that has often treated women as expendables. Still others are attributing ideological and religious motives to the horrifying circumstances. If even Shraddha's murder, viewers, can't bring us to shed our preconceived notions, crawl out of our silos, to ask the right questions, to condemn this in unison, this act of brutality in one voice, then God help us as a society and whatever pretensions we have to civility, let alone anything else. And I think, Dr. Ranganathan, you'd agree with me, isn't it? I mean, look at the fractured response. I mean, I am reading social media posts. I'm going over, political remarks that are trickling in where one side is blaming the other, and there is an unfortunate breakdown here. And I think this has come out of the hate that is whipped up because we get so defensive about what we stand for that we forget that the other person might have a point of view. And I've suffered that, you've suffered that, the cancel culture that is, at some level or the other becoming. And of course, we have an activist with us, Rashmi Samant, who has suffered it in a life-altering way, viewers. So we know what this cancel culture does. It blinds us. And if Shraddha's death can't unite us, then I'm afraid, viewers, her death will go in vain. We owe it to her. We really owe it to her, don't we, Dr. Ranganathan? We owe it to her.
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists. It's been an absolutely horrific crime to know, and the bone-chilling details have just left me absolutely stunned, and my sincere condolences to the father and the mother and those who are bereaved. It's really a horrendous crime. There's not much I can say except at this point of time, if you permit me, a couple of things.
Yeah, of course.
The one that you touched upon yourself, I'll come to that a bit later, but I think it's too early to talk about this in more detail because the investigations have just started. Yeah. It doesn't seem to me, prima facie, to be a case of impersonation, i.e. love jihad, and it doesn't also seem to me to be a case of a religious motive, at least on the face of it, like others have been previously. There have been terrible murders committed in interfaith marriages that have happened, that have had distinctly as borne out by investigations to have religious motive. In this case, it doesn't. But because you asked, Rahul, what attributes really a religious motive to such crime, and it's very difficult to say, and that is one of the problems, because some people have been so selective in the past that they immediately attribute a religious motive when it's not there. Like in this case, it's not very apparent. But if the perpetrator was a Hindu or a Dalit and the victim was, a Muslim, then the headlines would be that, a Hindu man murders a Muslim woman. I mean, we've seen this so many times before, and in fact, people on social media have made these, these panels where on side one, the same magazine says something else, and side two, when the perpetrator is Muslim, the things are omitted. And so I want to perhaps, kind of coax my fellow panelists into a more philosophical thing. What really constitutes whether a case is communal or not? Very briefly, 30 seconds, let's take Palghar example. I mean, the ready identification of a saffron-clad sadhu was not enough for it to be attributed to, a communal hate crime. What, for example, if instead of the Palghar in sadhus, it was a sherwani-clad, cap-wearing Maulana from UP, and the UP police had, taken him, this Maulana, and thrown him to the wolves? What would the magazines and the other media would be saying? Would they not be attributing a communal motive to that? So these are the questions that we need to ask, but of course they would come at a later stage. Today, of all days, it has to be, a sincere condolences and maybe a reflection on, as you correctly put it, whether we are a deeply fractured society at this point of time to even identify, what brings about such crimes.
I know. I am getting this feeling, and I want to bring in Rahul Ishwar and Rashmi Samant and Lokesh Jindal. But just before that, let me quickly go across to Priyank. I'm being told that there are more exclusive probe details that are being accessed. So the police, viewers, just a short while back, in fact, put out a statement so that there is no misinformation. Now remember, viewers, Times Now has not even once mentioned, not in this intro, not in our lines, not in anything, the religious identity of these people. They are for us, Aftab and Shraddha, two Indians, viewers. Neither do we, viewers, want to paper over anything. And neither do we want to add motives where none exist. Let me, I'm going to pick off from where, before I bring in Priyank, Dr. Anand Ranganathan was saying. I'll tell you one case, viewers, where even I was shocked. The crime was really the apathy of the police that wanted to cover up its tracks. And I'm taking you back to Hathras now, all of you, viewers. So Times Now began that story questioning the police and the hastiness with which they sort of, burnt the body, cremated it, etc., of this young woman who happened to be a Dalit. For us, it was not about her being a Dalit. But viewers, a whole group of individuals started focusing on the identity and saying, oh, look, an upper caste Hindu man has killed a Dalit, because you see, Dalits' lives don't matter in this country. It was quite strange, because about 100 or 200 kilometers away in the eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, further east, there was another crime where, in fact, viewers, a Muslim man had killed a Dalit lady, a Dalit woman. And no one was attributing any motives there. I think that's what Dr. Ranganathan was trying to say, and because we have become so blinded by our own...
And in this case, if I'm not mistaken, Miss Shraddha, the late Miss Shraddha, is also a Dalit.
Well, I wouldn't know. I didn't go that far. So if that is indeed the case, it's a revelation to me. So as I'm saying, viewers, look, I'm not here focusing on identity. We want to understand why somebody who was obviously reaching out and telling people that she was in an abusive relationship but couldn't quite extract herself from it, got no help. Viewers, were we so worried that we might step on a fault line that would be used as a stereotype that we kept away? Viewers, I'm getting that distinct sense. Oh, we will end up, labeling X community as a peculiar type of community that would do something and that would be acceptable, etc., or their mindset. You see, no, viewers, when you start doing this, you are letting down the people involved, the people who are going to end up suffering. And that's what, you know, in a way, Rajat Shukla was trying to tell us. That maybe, you know, these kind of narratives, as you know, viewers feed. People would have said, oh, you're picking on this couple because you see they happen to be an interfaith couple and therefore you're exaggerating a particular problem which doesn't exist, etc. But we'll come to that later. And I want to bring in Priyank Tripathi. Priyank, you've been, of course, following this case and you've been speaking to a large number of your own contacts in the Delhi police, etc. Now, what are you learning? Because what I'm seeing on the screen that we are putting out, this is eye-opening and points to some amount of premeditation.
See, Rahul, the couple shifted to the national capital 5 days before the brutal murder happened. But what happened after that is more horrific because the detail which I have managed to gather clearly points out that after a small verbal fight, he strangulated Shraddha and then he slept inside the house after dumping the body inside the washroom area. Next day, he went to buy a refrigerator so that the body pieces can be hidden there. Along with the refrigerator, he bought a knife and plastic bags, and every night at 2 a.m. he used to leave his house, go to the nearby forest area, dump the bodies, the body pieces, and come back. And that drama, that horrific thing continued for 16 days. What on earth, who on earth, Rahul, can do something heinous like this, that you are in a relationship with a person for the last 3 years and then you kill that person and then chop the body into pieces. Every night at 2 a.m. you leave for dumping the pieces to different locations. But that did not end there, Rahul. He did not inform the police regarding any kind of missing complaint which should have been given by him if he wanted to give it as a plot. He cleaned the refrigerator with chemicals so that no evidential proof could be found from the refrigerator even if the DNA samples are taken. So we are talking about an individual who was living in the same house for 16 days till the time all the pieces were thrown to the forest area, and then he used to again come back, have dinner, sleep there, and then order food from online portal. I have not come across any individual like this. Like last incident which I had covered in Uttarakhand, the husband had killed the wife and the body was put inside the refrigerator, and then he used to dump it in one go. But for 16 to 17 days, body pieces being taken out, being thrown, is something very horrific, and this is first of its kind which has happened in India.
Well, there you have it. Some more information coming out: formaldehyde used, etc. Bones found, sent for forensic investigation. So there is more being recovered from that home. Viewers, it seems to be the den of a ghoul right now. I want to bring in Rashmi Samant and Rahul Ishwar and Lokesh and Advocate Ehtesam Hashmi. Let me first begin with you, Rashmi Samant. You see, the problem is of self-censorship at some level, where we perhaps didn't want to ask the questions which are legitimate because that would have sort of cast this entire relationship into, as you know, a familiar pattern, stereotyping. Do you see that perhaps is one of the reasons today?
Firstly, I think it is horrifying that this degree of organized crime has percolated to domestic spaces in India. I mean, the sheer planning and the precision and execution is bone-chilling. Secondly, I do agree that labeling has unfortunately been dictating the degree to which we outrage and the degree to which we ask questions. Had it not been an interfaith relationship, I'm sure her friends would have been more comfortable asking more questions about the very abusive nature of the relationship. And millennials, unfortunately, we are so scared of labeling. We want to be accepted within society, and we put in all these blinkers, and I think interfaith relationships are, of course, one of the no-go zones wherein you don't ask questions, irrespective of obvious signs like that of abuse which existed. And I think as a society we have failed by ascribing to stereotypes, by ascribing to existing norms, and of being scared of ostracized. We can't let labels scare us. We can't let labels scare us of ostracization and then let it dictate our actions, because that is the sign that our society is not governed by the principle that it should be. And these things will continue to happen if that's the case.
And this has happened in the past when there have been interfaith relationships and they've been in trouble. People have said, let's keep away, because if one community or members of one community were to intercede on behalf of one of the couples, it would be said, oh, here is an attempt to try and split a relationship which typifies the diversity of India. This is an assault, this is intolerance, look at this. Here is a whole group of Hindus trying to extricate a Hindu from a relationship with somebody of another faith, etc., etc. And it works the other way too. So people just keep away. Say, forget it, let's not get into this. And I want to bring in Lokesh Jindal of the Congress and the other sort of secular-minded parties which, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Rahul Ishwar, that are sort of to blame for creating this victimhood narrative, that one set of people are more oppressed than the others. Lokesh Jindal, I want to ask you this. Would you today accept that perhaps we've gone a bit too far with this labeling nonsense? Needs to end. It's keeping people away from asking the right questions.
I didn't get your question, Rahul. Can you please rephrase it?
I don't know what more to say. It is a complicated issue, and I don't want to use words, but I'm trying to say, Lokesh ji, is this: if you perpetuate this narrative that the members of one community are the oppressed in this country, are the victims of an ostracization, others who might be do-gooders, who might want to actually intercede and prevent something from happening, might not want to. Because they'll say that we will be seen as the enablers of the oppression. You see what I'm trying to tell you, Lokesh ji? Today the Congress party, for example, which is a party that has coined a very beautiful phrase, ladki hoon, lad sakti hoon. I am not seeing the Congress party take the strident view that it usually does in other aspects. And I don't want to make this about communities, but I find your response rather muted. The response is taking on the BJP or the lack of their response or outrage or their response, etc. But I'm not seeing, conversations around, well, women need to be protected from abuse and torture in their own homes. We must have a system that allows for anonymous counseling. We must improve access of women to, for example, services where the battered or the brutalized can actually go and get an empathetic hearing. I'm not hearing this discourse, and it's worrying me, Lokesh bhai. It really is.
I'm really glad, Rahul. It's a very constructive debate that we are discussing over here. The issue is really, it's a heinous crime. And there are two important things that I would like to bring to the focus. The first is, yes, there is a need of a law, not just limited to marriage, but even with respect to live-in partners as well. There needs to be a law, an enabling, you can say, platform whereby women, they can report if they are facing such form of abuse. And another issue is with respect to censoring of the OTT platforms, which are brewing a culture of
the hallowed ground of protest politics, which was Raisina Hill, if you remember this. And after that, we've had a permanent sort of injunction on whether you can hold a protest there or not. But you must remember that. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, no, I do. And, I see that as a tragedy because, and I've had this opinion that there are 35,000 rapes that happen in India every year, and each rape is as worse a crime, as heinous as the other one.
Yeah.
It took a Nirbhaya for us to formulate guidelines and for Justice Verma to come and sit and, have a 600-page report that still many of our governments, including the central government, has not followed. But can I very briefly tell and briefly disagree with my good friend Mr. Jindal, because when he's talking about OTT and he's hinting at censorship, does he mean to say that the film Psycho that was in the 60s led to psychopathic murders being let loose and psychopaths being let loose and embalming happening and, taxidermy happening. No, I think there is no relation to that. What happens is in this case, and very briefly, I want to touch upon this thing that I tried to coax the fellow panelists to get an answer on. About Palghar, ready identification of saffron clad, and still people saying that it was not a communal crime. I ask again because a week ago, not many people in fact know who Mr. Kanhaiya Lal or Kanshi Lal Bheel was.
Yeah.
He was killed by 5 Muslims for daring to take water from a tube well. This happened in Rajasthan 5 days ago. There has been no outrage. A tribal was lynched in broad daylight. Because many people said this is not a communal crime. They disregarded the fact that here was a tribal who was prohibited from drinking water from this so-called, upper caste Muslim tube well. Not only that, the brother of the victim said that virulent casteist slurs were hurled at Mr. Bheel before he was killed. He was in fact even refused a trip to the hospital. So you are absolutely right, Rahul. There are 2 ways that people deal with each of these crimes, and that is a real tragedy. Yes. On one hand, you go immediately for identification. On the other hand, you keep it away. And that is a tragedy in this country.
Yeah, Rahul Ishwar, let me bring you into this. Isn't this a fact?
Rahulji, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's an open it's an open secret that our left liberal friends has a pseudo secular bias and hypocrisy in dealing with this. Like Rashmi rightly pointed out, or like Dr. Anand rightly pointed out, there is, and let us be honest about it, there is a pseudo secular bias. But equally importantly, there is another point too. It is regarding relationship education. For example, in Kerala, some weeks back, there was a 22-year-old rank holder Grishma who poisoned her boyfriend. Some months back, there was a person who chopped off the heads of of his girlfriend, and then he said, I only will get 14 years. After that, I will come back and live a normal life. So something is happening to the sociological, psychological aspect of our youngsters. Kerala State Youth Commission, which I was a part, many women's commission have rightly said, we need something called a relationship education in our schools and colleges. Romance changes into revenge. They all started with good romance. Romance changes into revenge. Sometimes passion changes into perversion. We have to stop that. And what is the way ahead? Value education, life skill education, ethical sensitization, and a relationship education. In US parlance, they usually call it men are from Mars, women are from Venus, quoting from Dr. John Gray. Even though it is pop psychology, it drives the point home. So from school time onwards, especially from the age group of 16 to almost 2022, where our minds are a bit more impressionable, we are growing on a particular phase, our ideas about the world and relationship are not yet formed, we need to instill a sense of relationship education without moral policing. Maybe ethical consciences can be there.
It's a very important point.
Imposing moral policy.
Because even that would be politicized. Let me tell you, people would say, this suits one community more than the other. Yeah. And then, of course, we will know the discourse that will come in, that certain, these are too progressive for one community, not so progressive. We have our own sort of, codes, etc. to live by. This is not acceptable. This is apostasy. You'll hear a lot of that also, viewers, and people will back off. You see, so life issues, as I said, life and death issues, we are constantly locating them in the box of identity politics. Ehtesham Hashmi, am I right or am I wrong, sir? You please tell me tonight.
Thank you so much for giving me a few seconds to express my views. And my sympathy is for the victim family, and the accused must be brought to books by following the due process of law. And as a human being, I don't want to express my views today as a lawyer because it's a very ghastly and unhuman crime. What I have seen in my 16 years practice as a Supreme Court lawyer and various courts, primarily in criminal cases I dealt with, I would like to say that almost 4,28,278 criminal cases of crime against women are pending in various states of our country. I would request Government of India to frame a dedicated law for these kinds of crime, like we can form a dedicated female officers who can investigate these kinds of crime, and dedicated criminal courts who can conduct the trial and punish the culprits. These are two crucial reforms which I would like to suggest. And counseling center should be established to counsel the families of victims' family. And one more thing, we need to bring out a separate chapter and separate subject in schools so that we can teach our children that in which manner and what fashion we should interact with our female colleagues, because crime is almost like a mirror of the society. Criminals are from us only, and we should not divide crime on the basis of religion, caste, place of birth, etc. If we follow the strict guidelines issued by Government of India or National Commission for Women and various guidelines given by Supreme Court of India in Vishakha case, we have seen lots of guidelines issued by Supreme Court. If we follow these kinds of guidelines in a strict manner, then I can say that these types of crimes should be curtailed.
These are very lovely suggestions, and obviously all of us would want these conversations to happen, but the conversation can only happen when there is enough public momentum. See, Times Now will do this story tonight, and we will feed those who are watching this only to find out, bhai, kya hua? अरे अरे तो जघन्य हत्या हुई, क्या कैसे मारा, क्यों मारा? So there will be that one set of people who are tuning in to get the facts of this, and then they'll say अरे अरे देखो ये वाली छुरी और वो वाला fridge and this that. But the larger conversation can only happen, viewers, if you start accepting that there are fault lines, and we need to very quickly come to terms with them, call them out for what they are, and address the problems that are associated when people dare to love without prejudice. And that's very, very important. Dr. Ranganathan, that is the conversation we never seem to have in this country. And when we do have it, it is so politicized that there is no point having it.
No doubt, and I think my good friend Mr. Ehtisham has brought out some excellent points, and especially about the courts and how the process should be expedited, and also the investigation. But may I please kindly disagree with him on one point when he says that any crime should not be any religious motive should not be attributed. I think I'm afraid you're wrong, Mr. Hashmi, because religious bent crimes happen all the time. In fact, it was you who attributed religious motives to Junaid's murder, Pehlu Khan's murder, and Akhlaq's murder, and possibly rightly so. There have been, I took the example of Mr. Bheel, who was murdered and lynched by a Muslim mob. It was after casteist slurs were hurled at him, so that obviously had a communal angle to it. There are communal angles to a crime, and there are no communal angles to a crime. So it's not right to say that every crime is devoid of any communal angle. That's all. That's the limited point I want to make.
And that's the point.
I'm not saying that, Dr. Ranganathan. I just want to take 2 seconds from this precious show that exceptions are always there. All accused are human beings, but all human beings are not accused of a particular crime. Like we have seen in the Bilkis Bano case, it's a direct example of hate crime, and her family has been brutally murdered but because of their religion only. But in 80% cases, religion has no role to play. Like we have seen this case on which we are doing discussion. They know each other since last 3.5 years. And even police has ruled out that there is any motive because of religion.
No, we're not talking about this case. And I don't think Dr. Ranganathan was referring to this case. He was generally speaking about your comment where you said, oh, let us not look for religious motives behind crimes, because there have been so many lakhs of crimes in India, this, that, the other. Unfortunately, some crimes are determined by identity, others are not, and that's a fact. My point is we should equally ask and interrogate those crimes and the facts around those crimes with equal persistence. We can't blindside one and, allow the other. So you talked about Bilkis Bano, for example. Now, there was a crime about identity. There was certain a terror group, sir, and the members of that terror group have been freed by our very altruistic judicial system and our bleeding heart liberals who sit in our political circles. And then they also went and did jappis and gave them flowers. These people waged war against the Indian state, and there was definite identity behind it. But sir, we will question the relief given to the Bilkis Bano, rightly so. Bilkis Bano, one minute, let me finish, sir. I'm not speaking over you, let me just finish. The Bilkis case you will talk about, but the clemency that was given to X or Y or sought by X and Y will not be talked about. So that's the problem.
Let's have a debate on it.
No, of course, we would love to, and we've had those debates.
I'll express my views.
Yeah, but Ehtesham Sahab, those debates never end up in anything constructive. Uspe bhi hum jhagad lete.
But still you are trying,
no
Rahul,
fun.
Rahul, I must say that you always try to raise these kinds of core issues. And all Indians are watching you and they are learning from you and people like Dr. Ranganathan.
Tonight, viewers, and I'm moving on because there's a lot others. There's been a massive development in the Supreme Court also. But I think, viewers, it would have been better had all the rights activists asked the right questions tonight. But they haven't. They've kept quiet. Now, I don't know why. I'm not going to attribute motives. I'm going to take it in good faith. They're so stunned into silence that they can't bring themselves to say anything because the facts have chilled them to the bone and a certain inertness. I hope that is the reason. Because if it isn't, then unfortunately, Shraddha's life, which has been lost, is going to be lost in vain. These questions will have to be asked. Let's hope, viewers, we are not back tomorrow asking more questions of the banal kind. I hope that in the next 24 hours, we really see a bunch of activists come out, shed aside their ideological blinkers, stop censoring themselves, forget about the identities here and ask those questions that need to be thoroughly debated. Thank you. Thank you, viewers, for being patient here. And thank you, panelists, for putting your perspective forward. I want to move into this next